Minumungkahi natin, unahin muna ang mga nakatatanda.
More than 11 million Filipinos have been vaccinated, with Metro Manila averaging 156,000 daily vaccinations. On the fifth day under ECQ, meanwhile, is it time for the government to consider vaccinating children? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to this special edition of The Chiefs. Ako po si Robbie Alampay. Kasama po natin Ed Lingao of One News. Mamaya-maya sasamahan tayo ni Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star. Bok, good evening.
Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. Ano bang, merong mga masayang balita sa Tagalog kung susubaybayan mo.
Hindi ko alam
Hindi
kung
naman sa masaya. Pero medyo yung mga intriguing balita sa politika. Ha?
Ang alam ko makulay.
makulay.
May istoryang politika na tumawid sa COVID. In this particular case, di ba, may pasaring ang Pangulo doon sa isang mayor sa Metro Manila na hindi niya pinangalanan, na sabi niya dati
Si Mayor
nagugubad
Isko
at,
yun!
Hindi ko na sinasabi ko sino.
Pag-iisipan pa ba yan? Kailangan pa ba ispilingin yan?
Natatanggalan daw niya ng kapangyarihan mag-distribute ng ayuda. Dahil hindi raw maganda yung kanyang performance. Pero naglabas naman si Mayor ng kanyang certificate galing sa DILG na magaling daw sila mag-distribute ng ayuda. So at ang huli kong book na dinig ang DILG, hindi tuloy malaman kung anong gagawin dahil parang may utos yung Pangulo kagabi, pero wala namang diretsang utos sa kanila kung anong gagawin.
Medyo awkward nga for DILG. Kanina sa Big Story, kausap ko si DILG Undersecretary Martin Dino. So, tinanong ko siya, sa punto de vista nyo, kayo ba, is that referring to Manila? Is that referring to Manila Mayor Isko Moreno? On the one hand, medyo same thing that Harry Roque said, na hindi, walang binanggit ang Pangulo. So, wala kami pwedeng banggitin. But when I forced it, sabi ko sa kanya, pero katulad na sinabi ko sa'yo, sabi ko, Sir, si Mayor Isko yun, di po ba? Nag-ano pa ba tayo? Sabi niya, doon naman patumbok yun eh. O siguro yun na yun. Diba? But then I asked him about the certification. Paano ngayon yan? DILG nag-certify na maayos ang ayuda sa Maynila. Sabi niya, at the end of the day, we will have to go by what the President said.
Yeah, but he hasn't given an order yet, aside from the order he gave in public.
Which means that for now, this is all still politics. And will probably still continue to be politics for the rest of the, nobody's surprised. For now, let's talk about, as you said, the other side of this coin, COVID. Yan pa rin yung punot dulo ng pag-uusapan natin. Joining us, Dr. Maria Consorcia Lim Quizon of the COVID-19 Interim National Immunization Technical Advisory Group, or NITAG. Dr. Conky, welcome to the Chiefs.
Glad to be back. Good evening to you, Ed. Good evening to you, Robbie.
Doctor, in your expert opinion, si Manila Mayor Isko Moreno ba yun?
Wala yata dyan na expertise
natawa si Doktor. Hindi, sige, Doktora. Doon na lang tayo.
Kawindang ako.
Hindi, diretso tayo sa isa pang mainit na usapin ngayon, yung pagbakuna sa kabataan. No? On the one hand, we're following the news abroad and also in the scientific community more and more. There are more vaccines being authorized for use for youth. 15 and below, even 12 and below, even as young as 5, I've seen, hindi naman po lahat ng bakuna. But in general, ano pong view niyo dyan? Is it time? Do we have enough data on this?
Yes, we just had a meeting with the NITAG, with the all experts panel yesterday, and ang consensus is that hindi pa dapat. Sa sitwasyon natin dito sa Pilipinas, it's not yet warranted to include the children. You know, when we say children, that is 18 below. When we say the youth, that's 24 below. So as of the moment, although there are reports that there are increasing number of cases, children and youth being hospitalized, hindi pa rin warranted na ma-include natin sila sa ating mga priority subpopulations as of the moment, mainly because of not enough vaccines.
Because it's a supply issue po, in other words.
Right,
It
right.
still is a supply issue.
It still is a supply issue.
Doc, physiologically, all things being equal, how does the immune system of somebody below 18 compare to that of the immune system of somebody who is, let's say, edad namin?
Yeah.
Edad namin. But you know what I mean? Comparatively
Yeah.
speaking, how do they compare with each other?
Well, children are so resilient and they have stronger immunity, you know, and that's the reason why from day one, magmula noon, you know, when all over the world, when they said that who are the target population, it was 18 and above. There was never any mention about 18 and below because if all the health authorities agreed that they aren't as at risk of developing the severe form of the disease compared to the older population.
So they're the sector best protected, at least all things being equal,
Right.
against severe infection.
They can get the infection, but it is most possible that either they're asymptomatic or at worst, mild infection. So that's the reason why, sige, you're put in this subpopulation na at the moment they are not at risk.
And Doc, that stands for across. That stands for the experience across all variants, because I get the
Yes.
impression that there's also a concern about whether or not Delta is now changing the demographics of those being infected.
Well, in the first place, we believe that the Delta variant is really like 70% more transmissible than the other variants, okay? So that being said, talagang tatamaan kahit yung mga hindi dating tinatamaan. So that would include the younger population. That is not to say mas grabe ang Delta. It's simply because it's more transmissible. And so that the more susceptible population are out there in the field, in the open, you know, the virus is going to get to them.
Okay. So,
We have Ami. Okay, sorry, Bok.
But do I get it right? It is as Bok asked. I just want to clarify that it is more of a supply concern for you right now. It's not really so much about the risk and efficacy.
Right. And also for the risk and the efficacy of the vaccine, not all of the vaccine manufacturers have already done research among the efficacy in children, right? I mean, one or two, ayoko na magbanggit na mga brand. So meron naman na pero hindi lahat. So having said that, if we go into that let's vaccinate children, okay, but even for the population that are supposed to be vaccinated now, there isn't enough. And then if we include children and there are only 2 or 3 vaccines that can be used for children, how are we going to solve that? How are we going to go through that? So the thing is, ang nakakatakot is that if we keep on talking about this anymore, we create a demand. We create a demand and there isn't enough supply. We create chaos.
Dr. Conky, ito na po si Ami Pamintuan joining us from Manila in Philippine Star.
Good evening, Doctor.
Hi, Ami. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Doctor, but you will acknowledge that, the scientists are saying that the Delta variant has a bigger viral load. And you will acknowledge that there is greater risk for children at this point because Delta is spreading. Tama ba yun?
There is a greater risk for everybody to get infected as long as na-exposed ka. And that is the reason why up to now, sa totoo lang, we're not really, Delta or no Delta, hindi pa naman natin dapat pinapakawalan lang lahat ng tao out in the open, right? Because that is what is protecting us. That they shouldn't be that exposed outside.
Kasi we're seeing a lot of these stories from different countries about children getting infected, from all ages pati, di ba? And even the Philippine General Hospital said na napuno nga daw, although konti lang naman, napuno nga yung kanilang pediatric critical care for COVID. Kaya nagkakaproblema. So ano kaya ang pwedeng gawin ngayon? Because all the parents are worried. Ano kaya ang
Right.
pwedeng nilang gawin?
Ang pwedeng gawin, because yung magic bullet na hindi naman magic bullet na bakuna ay hindi pa sapat para sa lahat, we continue to practice and be more prudent in practicing yung hand washing, staying at home, social distancing, and so on and so forth. Yung apat and dapat, we continue to do that. You know, actually about a month ago before this surge, nakalimutan ng mga tao that DOH is still reporting at least 5,000 new cases per day, and that's a lot. You know, after we had that surge in April, wherein we breached the 10,000, tapos bumaba nga, but still 5,000. Why isn't anybody worrying na 5,000 pa rin yun araw-araw? And so eto, nagsisearch na naman tayo. In comparison, last year, no November, nung nag-search tayo, napababa natin ng 1,000, 2,000 a day. Okay? So, kumpara ngayon, na 5,000 isang araw, parang minamanina lang ba natin yon? You know, and then parang we nag-relax tayo and again took children to the mall and outside. And so my short answer, Ami, is that really sa hindi pa available ang vaccine sa ngayon, we have to continue to practice and do as individuals what we are supposed to do to protect ourselves.
Dok, yung sinasabi nilang ring protection, is there any value there, any real value?
Ano yung ring protection?
My understanding is that
Ang daming ang
I
daming
think I got
terms.
this from
Oh,
Secretary
sige.
Duque.
Oo.
I think it has to do with yung making sure that the adults do not bring the infection home.
Oo.
So you don't necessarily have to vaccinate
Yes.
the kids yet.
Yes. Actually, nung umpisa ng pandemic, it was the other way around. Kaya natin hindi pinapasok ang mga bata is because sila ang pwedeng mag-uwi. Sila hindi makakasakit eh. They can carry the virus and not manifest it. Sila mang uuwi sa mga may edad. So it's the other way around. Dahil nakakulong na sila, yung mga may edad na lumalabas ang dapat maging maingat so they don't bring the infection home. You know, and you know, the other day yata, there was this very sad story about yung father got sick, was already sick, but he thought it was common cold hanggang yung anak niya nag-iisa got COVID and unfortunately expired. You know, so they were, pati yung nanay nag-positive. It's like, for me, my heart bleeds for you, pero hindi ba dapat nag-ingat kayo at alam nyo na may sakit ka na pala,
But,
nilalagnat ka na.
Doc, let's take that even further, no? How does that look at home? Let's say ako, papasok ako, di ba? Babalik ako sa bahay. I'm trying I isolate the child in a part of the house, and we literally have, kasi paano yun? Ako naman, I'm not isolated from my wife. And then, so how
Kasi you're an
is it
essential
in
worker.
practical
Like,
terms? Ano yung arrangement sa bahay? Ano yung arrangement sa bahay?
Example, hindi ba lumabas ka? So maaring na-expose ka. Pagpasok mo ng bahay, ang maganda, yung sapatos mo ginamit sa labas, iba yung sa loob. Kung pwede, bago mo yakapin ng anak mo, ang asawa mo, tanggalin mo muna yung street clothes mo, maligo ka muna hanggat maaari. Kung ayaw mo maligo at yung iba naniniwala sa pasma, maghugas ka man lang ng kamay bago mo sila lapitan. So yung mga bagay na yan. We're not saying na because ikaw yung araw-araw na lumabas, huwag ka na lumapit sa kanila. No. As much as possible, in
Minimize the
ordinary
risks.
terms, parang i-disinfect mo muna yung sarili mo bago mo sila lapitan.
So ganun pa rin. I mean, but just to be clear, kasi malinaw na sa lahat na, I think the message is out there. Kahit bakunado ka, you can still have the virus with you. Pagka naghugas kamay, naligo ka, and so on, that takes care of it, or is it actually inside you? How does that work? And what kind of assurance do we get out of that?
Well, I am not sure about the numbers anymore, but what we know is that kung nag-mask ka at saka naka-shield ka, you have 60% protection na you don't get the, what's this? That you don't get the virus, right? So, kung maghapon ka nandun, consistently and correctly na may mask and pagpasok mo, at least alam mo na not likely na meron akong dala. Na dahil naka-mask ka at saka naka-shield ka maghapon. And then you took off your clothes, you took off the things na exposed naman. So, naghugas ka ng kamay, you have a very, very high. I will not dare say 80 or 90% because I don't have the numbers, but suffice it to say that you are well protected already or not likely to pass on the infection to people at the house.
O sige, konti pang detalye, Doc. Halimbawa, would you recommend na maligo yung mga people who have been outdoors the whole day? Maligo
Theoretic.
ka. Tapos, would you recommend na iwasan muna if there are infants in the house? Iwasan muna yung mga kissing, yung physical contact.
Oo. Hindi, sabi ko nga, kung na-disinfect mo na yung sarili mo at nakapaligo ka na, nakapagpalit ka na ng mga sa bahay, then you're safe. You're relatively safe. And in the first place, hindi ba, lalo na kung may infant, kissing hanggang sa paa lang, COVID or non-COVID, hindi dapat natin hinahalikan sa mukha, hindi ba? Hindi ba? So sige, panggigilan natin muna yung banda sa paa. Parang ganon. But you can. We're not saying just because you work every day, then until the next, 2-3 years, hindi mo pa sila pwedeng lapitan. Hindi naman. You just have to, all of us will just have to be very prudent about this.
Paano sa mga maliliit na houses yung mahirap we have a lot of those, especially in informal communities, Anong mga measures, detailed measures that they can observe to protect the children? Lalo yung malalaking pamilya, dikit-dikit yan. Dikit yan na natutulog dun sa isa lang na kwarto.
So, hindi ko alam sa malaking pamilya at maliit na kwarto kung ilan ang lalabas. Di ba? Kasi ang issue natin, yung na-expose kasi. Yung ganon. At saka ano ipapasok mo sa loob. Kaya nga kahit lumabas ka, kung nakamask ka, nakashield ka, nag-social distancing ka, hindi ka nakichika ng more than 20 minutes, o di less likely na dala mo. Pagpasok mo ng bahay, nag-alcohol ka muna, naligo ka, kahit gaano kayo kadikit-dikit, disinfect mo naman ang sarili mo. There's some measure of protection na. Kasi, Ami, kung talagang walang kwenta yung ginagawa nating yon, nung unang, we could have had a very, very bad surge, mala India type, from before pa. But we didn't have it that bad, no matter how many communities are really congested. Right? So, and also, I don't think, but I could be wrong, I don't think there is data to say na dun sa mga totally congested, yung mga informal settlers natin. Hindi ko alam kung may data to say na talaga buon nang galing or karamihan sa mga kaso natin dun lang particularly doon sa mga komunidad na yon.
Doc, I have a question with the numbers nire-release ng DOH every day, and I suppose that a lot of people are also following the DOH numbers. Just for clarity, for the layman, kasi the numbers are swinging up and down. In the last few days, yung new cases nationwide have been going down. Ngayon, nasa 8.5 a couple of days ago, it was at 11. So people might be getting into that, might be getting lulled into that false sense of security. Should the public be looking at the number of new cases per day, or should they be looking at other things as well? Like, for example, the positivity rate, or the occupancy rates, and so on down the line. In other words, where should we be looking at? Ano yung mga significant numbers talaga?
You can look at the up and down. If there's a graph, you can look. Pero yung changes every day, kung hindi continuous naman, yung kumbaga nagsisigsag pa lang na gano'n, o sige, wag mong tingnan yun. Ang importante, mas mataas kesa doon sa dati. Okay? So we know that we're still there. Hindi pa bumababa doon sa kinoconsider nating komportable tayo and normal. We could look at the positivity rate. Okay? Right now, it stands at, I think, 21%. If I'm not mistaken. 21. So that's 22. So ibig sabihin, 1 out of 5 na
Yeah.
tinetest is positive. So, but there are ways to look at that, to interpret that. It is entirely possible na kaya 21% yon, maliit ang denominator mo. Okay? Yung mga taong nagpapatest. Baka nagpapatest ng pag may nararamdaman na. Hindi ba dapat pagka nagduda ka na exposed ka, wag mo nang hintayin yung that you are symptomatic. Just go have yourself tested. So we might be missing out on those and just looking at those who are symptomatic and having themselves tested. So, but nevertheless, I don't think we should be comfortable at 20% positivity.
Yeah.
Kasi it's higher than the positivity rate that we hit nung summer.
Right.
April 9, the highest was 21.4, and
Right.
now we're at 21.9.
Right. So we shouldn't, so it's not good. What's point something among friends? Pero ibig ko sabihin, the fact na tumungtong ng 20%, that's not good.
Yeah,
you know?
but
And-
Doc, I'm just imagining in terms of the data and also the behavior of people, as you said, yung lumiliit yung denominator ng mga nagpapatest, could this be a downside to, on the other hand, before, nung na-overwhelm mga hospitals, there was also a message that went out. Look, kung hindi grabe, wag muna kayo dumiretso sa ospital kasi maaari namang lumipas lang yan. And we hope, yeah, on the one hand, we hope that's what most people are experiencing na they're saying, ay, okay naman pala. But is that a trade-off here? Is that a possible trade-off here na you have more people heeding that, let's not overwhelm our hospitals kung wala ka namang, kung hindi naman grabe, but then the consequence might be they're not getting captured in the data.
Hindi. What we're saying na huwag kayo magpunta sa hospital kung medyo mild lang ang nararamdaman nyo. That's different
From
from
hindi natetest.
na-encourage natin yung mga tao na kausap ko si ganito, positive siya, nabalitaan ko, positive, pa-test nga ako. Magkaiba yon, di ba?
Yeah, but that's my point. I mean, for a lot of people, hindi naman mahalaga sa kanila yung, for some people, basta gumaling ako, I really don't care anymore kung matest ako. I mean, I can just imagine that might be one of the factors that's driving, as you said, the lower denominator of tests.
You're correct. But still, whether low yung denominator natin, hindi na rin naman biro yung 8,000 or 10,000, hindi ba? Hindi na nga biro yun. We still have to, we still have to be bothered and brace ourselves do sa 20% na positivity rate na yon.
Okay.
Dr. China has approved the vaccines made by Sinovac and Sinopharm for children from 3 to 17. Pag tayo nag-umpisa ng pediatric vaccination, do you think it's a good idea na mag-umpisa din tayo na ganong kabata? Or should there be a higher cutoff?
Good question, Amy. If and when we say that we're going to vaccinate already everybody below 18, we still have to prioritize. Para din ngayon, sabi na natin, population Pilipinas, and yet nag-prioritize tayo ng senior, nag-prioritize tayo na may comorbidities. Okay? Simply because we cannot afford to give everybody all at the same time. So my answer to you is that when the time comes that we actually say, let us vaccinate children, in all probability, there would still be subpopulations among those children. Like maybe yung mga may comorbidity, yung ganon, or yung younger age group. Baligtad, Sa children kasi, the younger, the more vulnerable. Sa mga on the other spectrum, the older. Yun ang more vulnerable. Kaya doon sa older, mag-umpisa ka doon sa pinakadulo. Sa children naman, kung magbabakuna na tayo, umpisahan mo rin doon sa pinakadulo, doon sa pinakabata.
How pinakabata are you talking about?
No, actually, that's theoretical as of now. When I say pinakabata, if you say 3 to 18, I guess yung 3. Ibig sabihin yung the lowest spectrum na yon.
Na hiningi ng kumpanya.
Oo.
But ngayon, yung some of the parents now, dahil nga kumakalat yung Delta among children, nakikiusap sila, yung mga may comorbidities daw na children, baka daw pwedeng i-prioritize along with the adult population. Is that a good idea as well?
Pinag-aaralan, because we had a meeting yesterday, as of the moment, pinag-aaralan ng ating mga expert panel. I mean, all experts, nandiyan ang pediatricians, infectious disease consultants, pinag-aaralan nga nila yon kung at this moment, kung pwedeng ilagay na rin. Doon sa ating A3, hindi ba comorbidity yon? So, meron ba tayong sinabing age doon sa comorbidity na yon? Sinabi lang natin, comorbid. Hindi ba? So, they're trying to look into that.
Okay.
So you will be using kung sakasakala dahil kukunti yung Pfizer, yung Sinovac and Sinovac. Well, not Sinopharm, Sinovac, nandito na kasi. Kasi
Oo.
yung approved na ng China for children. Kung sakasakala yan.
Oo, well, in-approve na Sinovac, pero in-approve na ba ng EUL dito, di ba? I mean, kung ano man sabihin nila, oo, kailangan dito sa Pilipinas din mapayagan muna sila, hindi ba? So, well, kung mapapayagan na sila sa Pilipinas, bakit ang hindi?
Doc, ano naman yung lambda?
Oh, alam mo, lahat ng...
Sige, makinig kayo. Yung mga mahilig mag-Viber, makinig kayo kay Dr. Conky, ha? Ano po yung lambda? What do we know or not know about the lambda variant?
Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, phi,
Yes.
magkakaroon lahat yan. Baka kulang pa yung Greek alphabet. Doon sa ibang klaseng sakit, tinatayang kuminsan mahigit 200 o 2,000 variants ang pumuputok sa isang klase na virus, yung ganon. So can you imagine kung ilan ang puputok dito? So there would be more. There would be more. We expect more. Pero sabi nga ng WHO, meron variants of concern, merong variants of interest, yung ganon. So meron. Hindi ba nga may homegrown variant tayo, yung Philippine variant na naano sa Cebu na mukhang as of the moment is still of interest, pero hindi naman yung of concern. Yung ganon. So there will be more.
Yung
There will be
lambda, just to be clear, yung lambda, interest pa lang yan, di ba? Variant of interest pa lang yan. So that means na notwithstanding lahat ng, mahilig, ito yung kumakalat ngayon kasi sa mga chat group But so notwithstanding that, the fact of the matter is it is right now still a variant of interest, which means hindi pa siya, hindi siya kasing tindi ng ibang variants na of concern.
Halimbawa, bigyan ko kayo na ehemplo. I think kung di ako nagkakamali ng isang araw, out of yung 8,000 plus na na-test na positive, 450 ang variants. Doon sa 450 na yon, 100 yung alpha, 100 yung ganito, 100 yung ata-ata, yung konti-konti. Compared halimbawa sa Amerika, ngayon nagsisearch sila, di ba? Parang na-hit na naman nila yung 100,000 a day, and 93% of those are of the Delta variant.
Yes.
If I am to believe Al Jazeera and CNN. So yun, so sa atin, actually we were recommended by WHO Pilipinas na we were able to delay yung entry ng Delta, and we were able to, sige, hanggang dyan ka pa muna, hanggang sa ngayon. It's not as if sabog na pero awa ng Diyos na kukontrol pa natin.
Doctor, may iba pa ba kayo na pag-uusapan kagabi sa night meeting ninyo?
Oo, klinaro yung kasi meron din mga issues about yung paano buntis. Yung ganon. So, ang talagang usapan dyan is unless talagang, ewan ko naman kung ano yung pagkakataon na talaga expose yung buntis, pwedeng magpabakuna yung second to third trimester. Yung unang 3 buwan hanggat maaari, huwag magpapabakuna. So, isa yon. Ikalawa na pag-usapan din is, paano kung nagpabakuna ako ng anti-rabies or yung ibang klaseng shots, kung pwede ba kaming magpabakuna ng COVID, gano'n. So, napag-usapan na mga yon, and ang sagot ng mga eksperto, hindi pala ako lang yun, ang sagot ng mga eksperto is, yung 2 weeks, within 2 weeks na nabakunahan ka ng rabies or nabakunahan ka ng, pwede kang magpabakuna ng anti-COVID. So, yun yung mga napag-usapan among others. 3.5 oras na meeting.
Oh dear. Yung Sputnik Light,
Yung
nabanggit ba?
Sputnik, Doc,
Yung Gamaleya, yun lang ang kaisa-isang bakuna na hindi pwede para sa buntis. Sabi niya talagang unequivocal, hindi pwede. At actually, sinabi din niya na hindi pwede para sa mga lactating, sa mga nagpapasuso, no? So yun lang, pero the rest pwede. So yun, having said that, we don't have, I mean, the Gamaleya or the Sputnik is not the lion's share naman of our available vaccine. Diba? So yun.
Okay.
Pero Doc, there's a pending application ng Sputnik Light for a single dose application of yung light nga eh. I asked about, of course it's still pending with the FDA but I asked about it kasi potentially theoretically it could relatively speaking double the amount of vaccines you have of Sputnik if it's approved, 'di ba? Kasi hindi ka na lang double dose eh, single dose ka na lang eh. So I'm wondering how that goes.
Alam mo, isa yun sa nakatagal sa usapan. Sige, mag-single dose na lang. Merong ang pinag-usapan, magbo-booster na daw. Yung ganon. So, makukulangan naman doon sa isa dahil dapat 2 doses lang, magiging 3 doses. Yung ganon. So, ang sagot dyan is kung ano muna yung ginagawa natin ngayon, yun muna yung susundan natin. What the EUL is for. So, if the available, what we have right now, it's still for the 2 doses. So, we will go with that. 2 doses muna siya.
Okay.
What I mean to ask is what are the chances of approving kasi Moderna, di ba, is a single dose? Sorry, Janssen pala. Janssen
Isa pa lang. Oo, Janssen pa lang ang single dose natin. Oo, yun pa lang, which of course was contributory, if I may say so sa show nyo. It looks like nakatulong na malaki yung single dose sa paghihikayat sa mga senior citizen na
Kasi isang beses
papakuna.
lang silang kailangan lumabas.
Oo. So I guess napakalaking bagay nun kung itong mga bakuna na to ay kung dadami itong mga brand ng bakuna who will be able to give us single dose instead
Yes,
of
Doc.
the needed double dose.
That's why I was asking about Sputnik Light. Anong prognosis ninyo? If it's possible to talk about it without preempting the FDA process.
Oo, and without preempting the vaccine panel, baka batukan ako, konsorsya, hindi mo ano yan. Anyway, yun na nga, I'm speaking in general, if it can be done on a single dose, administratively, logistically, and
Yes.
everything, napakainam ng single dose. If it will be proven that the same kind of safety and efficacy will be given by the single dose compared to the second dose, by all means, let us please have the 1 dose.
Okay. Dr. Conky Lim Quizon of the COVID Interim National Immunization Technical Advisory Group or NITAG. Maraming salamat po, Doc.
Thank you, Doc Conky.
Nauulitin po.
Maraming salamat din sa inyong lahat.
Okay. We will take a break, so please stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back. Welcome back, the Chiefs, here on One News. I'm Robbie Alampay, still with me, Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star and Ed Lingao of One News. Now joining us is Dr. Ana Ong Lim, pediatric infectious disease expert, member of the Technical Working Group on COVID-19 variants. Good evening, Dr. Ana Ong Lim.
Good evening,
Hi, Doc. Good evening po.
Evening.
Yeah. Ma'am, I don't know if you caught our interview with Dr. Conky, but of course we started by asking her about this people asking, is it time for us to also vaccinate children? Do you share her views and her opinion na wag muna, I mean, among other things for supply issues as well?
The countries that have worked on vaccinating kids only started doing so after they saturated the higher risk populations that they had within their countries, like the older individuals or those with comorbidities. And the approach to actually focus on the highest risk groups is very standard in terms of immunization programs. So, following that line of reasoning, kahit na sabihin natin na sufficient yung supply, yung efforts kasi to deploy the vaccines are very substantial. Kahit na sabihin natin hindi supply yung issue, yung logistics are a consideration. And kahit lahat ng bata mabakunahan natin, pero hindi natin nasakop yung A2 at A3 natin, will be in a really difficult situation, considering also that we have increasing cases now.
Kung sakasakaling matuloy yung pediatric vaccination, would you recommend a particular process to protect them from infection during the halimbawa lining up for their shots, for example, or basta yung along the way, kasi nangyayari na yun. We had reports of people getting infected habang naghihintay, for example, long lines sa vaccination centers. Are you also considering any special rules for pediatric vaccination?
Well, the general recommendation for any of the programs is to make sure that both the infection control aspects and efficiency are considered. So, very distressing talagang makita yung nagtutulakan, ang dami-daming tao, inaabot ng madaling araw na nakapila, no? So, kahit ano sigurong vaccination program, dapat ma-incorporate yung aspects ng convenience, ease of access, kasi it's a service eh. And I think people have the right to expect that service should be delivered efficiently and delivered well.
Doc, now that you mentioned it, now I imagine how difficult it must be to vaccinate children eh. Kasi
Yes.
now you're vaccinating adults, ang gulo-gulo na. If you vaccinate children, syempre yung children, kailangan may kasama yung adult. So you probably double, if not triple, the number of people in the vaccination area. At baka magulo pa rin given the last few days.
So that's Ed, no? That's just in the vaccination area. We're also talking about how do they get to the
How do they
vaccination.
get there? Yes.
Diba? So yung transportation issue is going to be a problem. We're limiting
Not everybody has a
mobility.
car.
Oo, diba? Saka siguro one thing we have to consider, the current EUA only applies for children 12 years old and up. So we're not talking about young kids here. These are pre-teens, they're adolescents, between 12 to 17 who might qualify if a program were ever to start. So it's a different population actually. Hindi tayo babalik dun sa ginagawa nating bakunahan na bit-bit ng nanay yung baby. It's not like that. So it's a very different dynamic.
Okay. Would that be, ma'am? This is a shot in the dark. Would that be, if at all, the priority? Mauuna muna yung 12 to 17 bago yung the younger kids, yung 3 to, for example, 3 to 11. Would that be the case?
There are no vaccines yet that can be given to below the age of 12. So walang EUA for any vaccines under 12 years. So wala tayong ibang option kung magi-include tayo ng vaccination program for kids using the currently available vaccines and the current EUAs. Kung hindi yung 12 to 17 and only for one product. Na alam naman natin napakaselan, 'di ba? Kasi supposed to be frozen siya. So, kung iisipin mo yung logistics, saan mo siya pwedeng dalhin? Siyempre, urban centers lang, very limited. At alam naman natin, yung supply is also very limited. So, there's so many hindrances to this. And given the impact that this will achieve, again, no, let's take away the consideration of supply. What kind of impact do we expect if we vaccinate our 12 to 17s versus focusing on our high-risk A2 and A3? Kahit na hindi natin siguro isipin yung numero, alam natin kung anong sagot doon eh.
Pero kung sakasakaling humingi ng, because I mentioned earlier na Sinopharm nga and Sinovac have already been approved for children in China from 3 to 17 nga. Kung sakasakaling humingi ang Sinovac, for example, ng special authorization in our country for use of their vaccine for children as young as 3, ano kaya ang sentimiento ninyo? You are part of the vaccine expert panel. Ano yung sa tingin nyo, will you go along with it?
We'll have to see the data because so far they haven't submitted anything for us to review. No? So it's very difficult to say anything for or against it. I think we have to realize that to be able to get back to near normal or move forward to better normal, children are going to have to be part of the equation. And efforts at looking for safe vaccines for the younger age group are ongoing. So if there's a company that tells us they have data and they can share it, then I think it's important for us to review it to see whether it really makes sense and whether it's something we can consider for our population.
Doc, I'd like to ask about the general situation, if you don't mind. Today, 8,650 new cases, a number of labs not reporting. But bottom line is, ever since we entered the ECQ, it's been 5 straight days of more than 8,000. In fact, high almost 9,000. No? Is it too early to be expecting any of the numbers to be either improving or flattening? I mean, just in terms of, just to help us manage our expectations also, should we expect the numbers to keep climbing a bit more, given na hindi immediate ang effect ng ECQ? What should we be expecting over the next few days? And how do you feel about these numbers as we entered ECQ?
I think we understand the transmission dynamics well enough after going through 1.5 years, no, that even the lay public knows na pagka nag-ECQ ka today, hindi mo makikita yung decrease bukas. Kasi nga, inaabot ng mga 2 linggo bago mag-reflect yung ginagawa natin in the community dun sa numbers na sinusubaybayan natin. So, as we are ending, the initial period of the ECQs, siguro dun pa lang natin makikita hopefully yung pagbaba ng mga numero. Kasi itong pagdami na to, this is the result of the activity that happened 2 weeks ago. The mobility patterns of 2 weeks ago. So, if you're asking the dami pa ba to, my answer is yes, tataas pa yan.
Yeah, I asked Doc because if I try to recall what was happening last week, before nag-start yung ECQ, literally on the eve of ECQ. And then, so we get the snapshot of that 2 weeks from now. The snapshot will be of yung kaguluhan sa Las Piñas at saka Maynila.
Exactly.
Diba? So,
exactly.
Is it possible, again, I'm just trying to manage my expectations. Does that mean that by the time we exit out of this initial ECQ, dun pa lang natin nakikita yung impact nung nangyari nun? And what might be the implications for, well, let's say it, I mean, considering whether or not an extended ECQ will be warranted?
So I don't want to burst your bubble, but there was never a cut and dried declaration that after 2 weeks this is done, di ba? So I think we have to be realistic. Ako personally, I'm not expecting to see anything going down till 30 weeks is up. And the events that you mentioned, they're probably going to impact significantly on the numbers that we see. So siguro yung inaasahan ko na lang, hoping against hope, is that yung pinuntahan nila ay bakunahan. Na naman yung nakuha nila ang bakuna nun, makakatulong to keep the numbers down.
Pero Doc, given the lag time, falling on around the date of the expiration of ECQ, what would be our basis for deciding whether or not to extend the ECQ? Di ba? Kasi yun nga if it's a bit delayed, kung 2 weeks delayed,
Yeah.
The variables that you may have to consider on whether to extend the ECQ or not are also delayed.
Delayed. Yes.
So how do you weigh that in?
Exactly. So those are really critical questions, no? Even for, well, you do know that we moved to a different metric, no? We're looking at an alert system, which tries to incorporate some of the newer information, like the presence of Delta, the kind of ER occupancy rate we have, so that we get a bigger picture. So basically, most of the decisions will still be based on the different aspects of healthcare utilization. So hopefully, even if the diagnosis, the cases go up, if the utilization is stable or goes down, then we have a chance to think about maybe loosening up some restrictions. So that's not something that we have good visibility on right now, because the impact of that will be based on the vaccination also, partly on the vaccination. So even as we're seeing vaccination ramping up, in 2 weeks' time, hopefully a proportion of those people would have been second dose and they would have started to feel the impact of the protection. Maybe that will translate to some kind of improvement in healthcare utilization. So that's what we're waiting to see.
Well, it's good, Doc, that you pointed it out kasi, as far as behavior is concerned, nasanay yung mga tao na tinitingnan lang yung new cases Yung new case rate doon sa DOH releases So, as it turns out, we should be looking at the other variables, more importantly, yung ICU occupancy rates.
Yes.
Opo, and ano pa po?
Actually, if you're familiar with the format of the DOH COVID tracker, people usually focus on the top pane, which is the total numbers plus the graph. But if you go down, lower onto that same page, you will see healthcare utilization metrics.
Yes, ma'am.
Number of beds in the ICU and in the different wards. I think that
NCR
will
in
be important to
Philippines,
look
opo.
at. Yes. You can actually look by region, and you'll see how much of the bed capacity has been filled up. So that actually makes a difference in terms of the decision making.
Doctor, there's another troubling aspect of the Delta variant at epidemiologists are saying na yung mga symptoms niya are very similar to the common cold. So yung runny nose, yung fever, yung allergy daw, yung sneezing. Paano yung, halimbawa, may mga kilala ko na araw-araw may allergy in the morning Diba yung
Rhinitis.
may rhinitis Paano yon? So, especially among children, when do you determine kung dapat nang magpa-testing for COVID?
Medyo mahirap nga no? Kasi these symptoms that are being shared by different institutions, different authorities. Another caveat to consider there is in some instances, those reports are coming off of people who have been vaccinated already. So, pwedeng na-modify na nung vaccination yung kanilang symptomatology. No? So, mahirap pang sabihin talaga ngayon na itong Delta is presenting with a different set of symptoms. Because in other countries, they'll say it's about the same. No? So, hindi pa talaga well established. But the fact remains, no, meron ng ganung report, sinasabi parang mas mild. Di natin alam kung talagang characteristic yan ng Delta or dahil bakunado. So the question is, when do you start thinking about being tested?
Yes.
Well, yung people with allergies, they kind of have a feel of what their regular symptoms are. And if you feel that it's a little bit off from your usual symptoms, then that might be a good idea, especially if you can identify an exposure that could have put you at risk. Kahit sa mga bata, no, that's typically what we ask when we check their histories. We ask, what's happening to the adults in your household? Meron bang nagkasakit? Kasi kung meron, talagang mataas ang index of suspicion and typically we will encourage testing.
Mas malakas kaya yung symptoms, for example, yung sneezing, will that be, kasi sabi nila hindi daw nawawala yung sense of smell and taste. Mas malakas kaya yung episodes of sneezing, for example, or mas mataas kaya yung fever?
There's no consistent information coming our way, with respect to that. Kasi madali sana kung masasabi natin na definitely hindi nawawala yung sense of taste and smell, because I can tell you, I know people with Delta, identified Delta, and they say they had anosmia. So it's very hard to say at this point. Wala pa talaga tayong consistent na patterns na na-identify. These are trends that are being reported. They remain to be validated. So regardless, kung ano pa man siya, syempre kung meron ka ng typical symptoms accompanied by fever, definitely magpapatest ka. Tapos kung wala ka man fever pero may respiratory symptoms, lalo na on the background of an allergy, then I guess the best thing you can do is pakiramdaman. No? Do you think this is typical of your usual symptoms? And then try to think back, na-expose kaya ako? Kasi kung yung constellation na yun mapagsama mo, parang iba ang nararamdaman ko and na-expose ako, syempre better idea, magpa-test na lang.
Kung uminom ka kaya, for example, ng Claritin at hindi tumalab, will that be the time to have yourself tested for COVID?
Pwede naman, no? That's what that is what you call a therapeutic trial. You try your usual meds, the symptoms don't go away, and you don't experience the typical improvement that you have, then that might also be a reason, to get tested as well.
Okay. Dr. Ana Ong Lim, pediatric infectious disease expert and a member of the technical working group on COVID-19 virus. Ma'am, maraming salamat po.
Ingat, Doc.
Thank you.
Ingat po.
Thank you.
And that's all for this special edition of The Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Ed Lingao, and we are One News.